Hello, this is Kevin here. Doing a screencast about the mud program. I'm going to explain the enemies, the game loop, a bit about the combat. We'll start here with the enemy. Just tell you it's made up of two different parts. A template that holds attributes that don't change, and then the other attributes in the enemy class that do change. So this would be like variables that don't change. I'll show you some of these now. Yeah. Okay. The enemy templates, these are made up kind of like at the player, like Chris has explained how these work. We have the ID tags, checks for white space, and reads in these values. So we can save enemies the exact same. So here we have a rabbit monkey. These are like all its starting variables. And there's a whole file full of these. Okay, so like I said, the enemy is made up of a template. It works just like the player class. It's gonna take in the stream, set them to the temp value. The loot works a bit differently because it's a list. It's going to keep on adding things to loot until it hits end loot. It'll push it onto the list, the loot, the ID of the item, and the chance of dropping it. Okay, so here in the enemy template we have loot. So it's going to look for item 40, which here is rusty knife, and we have a 3% chance of dropping that if we're a rabbit monkey. Same with item 35, which is a potion of some kind. It's 2% chance of dropping that. And here's the end loot, so that's when we stop adding loot into the list. Okay, if we go back to enemy, these are the variables that will possibly change for each enemy that we initialize. So we'll have a different template. We'll have hit points. These will change if people are attacking a monster. The room that they are in, and the next attack time, which is how fast they're going to attack the player. If we look in the enemy database, we can find that the enemy template is a vector database, whereas the enemy itself is map-based database. Okay, if we look at the game loop, we'll find that this is handles everything that depends on timers. So like enemy attack rate, players' health and regeneration. So if we take a look, we can see there's a few variables initialized here. This is because if it is the first time running, this game.data might not exist. So if this does exist, we're going to extract some variables from that to determine the time. If the file is corrupt, we'll go back to using the initialized time above these ones here. We'll use this save function here when we want to save our game loop data to a file. If we look at the loop itself, we can see that it has lots of if statements that will determine if we perform something. So I'm going to step through each of these. First of all, we have if our current time is greater or equal to next round, it'll perform round, and then it'll add the round time to that variable. So next time round, it's going to have to wait like a few seconds. All of them work like this with different things to perform and different variables to check against here. So if I take a look at perform round, this is going to be responsible for our combat in our game. It's going to iterate through the enemy database, get the game time here, while we're not at the end of the enemy database. We're going to check if the enemy can attack and if the current room the enemy is in has any players in it. If the room does have a player in it, we can attack the enemy. Sorry, I meant we can attack. The enemy can attack the player. Here in the enemy attack, we can see the enemy has a player list. It's going to randomly pick a player from this list to attack. It'll calculate what damage is done depending on if the enemy has no weapon. It's going to do damage between 1 and 3, else it's going to get the weapon's min and max damage. We also have accuracy versus dodging, so it'll calculate whether it's a hit or a miss. Then finally, if it is a hit, we will damage, which would be the damage will plus equals the enemy strike damage, which could be its attack or its weapon, minus the player's damage absorption. If the damage dealt is less than 1, we set it to 1, so there will always be damage dealt. We take the damage away from the player's hit points, and we send a message to everyone in the room saying how much damage the attack's done. If the player's hit points is less than 0 or equal to it, the player's dead, so we're going to have to kill the player. So we pass in the player and the ID. We're going to tell everyone in the room that the player has died. This player then will drop a percentage of their money. The money will be taken from the player and it'll be put into the room. Same with the items. It'll randomly pick an item if a player has one, and it'll place it in the room and out of the player. The experience will also be subtracted by 10%. Then we want to remove the player from the room's player list and set the player's current room to 1 and add it to that room. Then when he respawns, the player's only going to have 70% health. We also send strings saying you've died and how much experience you've lost, and if there's anyone else in the room, we send a message that so and so has appeared out of nowhere. Okay, so that's essentially what happens when perform round is called. They're all the things we check. If you look at perform regen, this is what will respawn our enemies. It looks through the rooms to see if we want to spawn an enemy. Spawn which here, if it's not equal to 0, we'll want to spawn an enemy. If it's set to 0, we don't want that room to spawn enemies. We also check if we currently have the max amount of enemies we want in the room. If we say only want 3 enemies in a room, we don't want it to keep spawning an enemy every time this is called. So we don't want to go into a room with 100 enemies and get annihilated. Okay, so when an enemy is created, it tells us that an enemy has entered the room, and we move on to the next room and do it all again. We also have to look at perform heal. This will heal the player when a certain amount of time passes. We get the HP regen from the attribute, and we add it to the hit points of the player we're looking at right now. We do that for all the players whenever this is called. One last thing was the save databases. We want to save the databases every so often. It's just down here. So we want to call this save function save player database, room database, enemy database. We want to save all these databases every so many minutes. So if our server does happen to crash, we can just go back to, let's say, 15 minutes ago. Let's see, I think the save function is up here, yeah. It'll save the game data, and it'll save all these to a file. And when these all have their own save functions, which save their own variables to a file. If I run the game here, okay, you see this is the game running. You can see I was playing it a lot. I've maxed out on all my stats somehow, and Badger Boy here is a new character. He's already got a bit of money. I'm gonna send him up north, and hopefully he'll get attacked by something. Let's see, a bandit, and he's killed me. I've dropped 1% of my money on the ground. I've resurrected in the town square, and it's told my other character he's appeared out of nowhere. If I send this character up north, he's extremely overpowered. He should be able to annihilate everything. Yep, he has died. The evil squirrel, that is. And I've gained 3 experience. If I go up north again, I see a bandit. I'll attack him, and I'll wait here for him to respawn, so hopefully it won't take too long. Alright, I've picked up the $2. This bandit, he's entered the room now, and he swings but he misses, because I'm insanely overpowered. I'll attack him, and he's dead. Alright, so if there's anything I missed out on, do tell, or if there's anything I haven't explained properly, tell me as well. Any other questions, leave them in the comments, and that's me, I'm done. Hey, thanks.